Good afternoon. My name is David Alexander, and this is Mark Petrucci, and we're here to welcome you to an exciting and fun event this afternoon. Mark is president-elect of the Columbus Bar Association.
Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon. First off, I'd like to apologize for Brad Reitzel, our president. He's on his way back from a trip and couldn't make it today. I also would like to say that it's always interesting, things like this. We learned something new. The flashing of the lights didn't seem to work to get you to sit down, but we put the food on the table and you sat down. That was very nice. We appreciate that. I want to express on behalf of the Columbus Bar Association, and of course myself personally, my thank you to our honorees for their continued service. I've known some of them. Mr. Perry was my go-to man for workers' comp when I was in practice. Judge Graham sanctioned me often, so I'm very familiar. Marion told me to be brief, so again, I'm going to end just right there. Thank you very much for your 50 years of service and many, many more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. On behalf of the Columbus Bar Foundation, thank you for being here as well. All of you, and particularly this group, are familiar with the important mission of the foundation. Its focus is on access to justice, legal services for indigent clients through grants to the Legal Aid Society, community mediation services, and the CBA pro bono program. Just as an example, since 1985, the foundation has given over $880,000 to the Legal Aid Society. Those grants are crucial in times like this when, because of funding cutbacks, they've had to dramatically reduce their services to low-income people. But the Bar's Foundation is broader. We serve professionalism within the legal community through CLE programs. Chester Family Institute comes to mind. An exciting new program launched by the Bar last year and supported by the Bar Foundation. New lawyers entering private practice participated in Columbus Bar, Inc., a national award-winning program recently recognized by the ABA. And we also serve lawyers in need due to serious illness or tragic circumstances. In its short history since 1985, the Bar Foundation has given more than $2.9 million in grants through your generosity. And because of that, we ought to begin by saying thank you, especially to the people in this room, on behalf of the foundation, the people it serves. And we're also grateful, of course, for the strong support of the Columbus Bar Foundation. So, now to the fun part, honoring our 50-year members. A couple of procedural rules, and it's a rare opportunity to impose a procedural rule on Judge Graham, so I'm going to take full advantage of it. We are here to give recognition, or as Lloyd Fisher said to Judge Graham within earshot a few minutes ago, it's about time you youngsters got some recognition. Each honoree has selected someone to make a few very brief remarks. We really do need to keep it to 3 minutes because we have so many honorees today. If we don't keep it to 3 minutes, we'll break our tradition of really getting folks out on time. So please do keep that in mind. And to the honorees, if you could just pause briefly so we can take a picture as you receive your award. But we'll leave the remarks to the persons presenting the award. So let's begin with that first award. Don Bailey to present to Donald Davies.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to present to you Don Davies. I didn't realize I only had 3 minutes, so let's do this in a hurry. Don started out of Ohio State Law School with the firm Knepper, White, Richard, Miller, and Roberts in 1962. Joined that firm as a corporate and tax lawyer. Not too long after joining the firm, the head of the corporate group with the firm, a guy by the name of Grant Richards, for those of you that have been around for a while, called Don into his office and asked Don to work with Grant on one of their clients, Mount Carmel. Don thought he was called to do that because of the great intellectual experience that he had demonstrated to all the partners. Well, in reality, later Don learned that Grant, who was a Lutheran, was representing Mount Carmel, a Catholic organization, and realized that was not going to be a long-term marriage, so Don was a token Catholic within the firm, and so that started a near 45-year career of healthcare law for Don. He was first lawyers, not just in town, but throughout the region that specialize in healthcare, and he's gone on to really create a name for himself as a healthcare lawyer. And incidentally, still represents Mount Carmel. I doubt if there's too many lawyers that could say they've represented the same client for more than 45 years, which Don can do. Lots and lots of things we could talk about, Don. One thing that is of note is that in addition to being a lawyer, he also served as the managing partner of the firm for 25 years or more. And most notably in 1977 in that capacity was the driving force behind the merger of then Necker White, Richards & Miller and the Arter and Haddon law firm in Cleveland. Now today that doesn't sound like a big deal as we hear about mergers seemingly every other month or so. At that time, that was a big deal. There was no Columbus firm with an office, much less a merger, outside of Columbus. That was the first affiliation with a Columbus firm and some firm outside of Columbus. Within several years after that, of course, we all know what happened after that. So for those of you, depending on your perspective, you can either thank or curse Don for creating the legal environment that we've got today. But the last thing I wanted to just comment on was for those of us that have been able to be fortunate enough to work with Don throughout the years, he's left a great legacy for all of us, not just in terms of mentoring us as lawyers, but he's taught us, as I think all of the honorees today have done, coming up through the ranks in the 1960s and early 1970s, appreciating the importance and value of civility, of integrity, of honesty, and making that as important, if not more important, than winning the case or getting the deal done for the client. That has been something that Don has worked hard to leave as a legacy for the rest of us within our firm, and I'm sure I can speak on behalf of the other honorees who are doing the same thing. Something that all of us can take a great deal of comfort from and still continue to learn lessons from. So with that, I present to Don, a terrific lawyer, but even a better friend, husband, father, and person, Don Davies.
And now Howard Howe to present to Ronald Davis. Just got accused again of being Ron Davis, but it's not me. I'm Howard Haddo. Ron and I have been practicing law together for almost 50 years, and I'm here today to present the awards to Ron. When he asked me to do that, I, of course, eagerly accepted it. And I said, "What do you want me to say?" And he said, "Oh, just tell him anything." And I said, "Well, you know, we've been together for 50 years or so, and there's a lot of things to say." And he said, "Not those things. Don't tell him that." So, fortunately, I was glad to see that this is limited, so I won't have to go into my, history of the firm and Ron Davis's contributions to it. But there is one thing I would like to say about Ron, and that is that he has been so extremely dedicated to his clients and to his co-workers, to his associates, and to everyone. He puts everything. If you're one of his clients or one of his friends, you're a friend or a client for life. And he's helped me in a lot of ways. I hate to admit that in front of all these people because I'll never hear the end of it. But he's been a great and dedicated, loyal friend, and I'd like to present him with his 50-year award. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And now Gary Hammond to present to Judge James Grant.
Thank you. In 1962, James L. Grant graduated summa cum laude from the Ohio State University College of Law and entered the practice in Columbus, Ohio, and became a member of this association. The early years were filled with hard work and success and service to the bar and members of the community, including his mentoring of young lawyers, his teaching, writing, lecturing for continuing legal education, and on issues of tort law and civil liability. I first met Jim Graham in 1978 when he was 16 years in practice and I was a law clerk at the firm of Graham, Dutro, and Nemeth. He was the senior partner of that firm and he had developed a very successful civil trial practice involving complex tort, medical malpractice, and business litigation issues. I practiced with him in that firm and he continued to practice until 1986 when he was nominated by President Reagan to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Ohio. He was appointed, he was confirmed by the Judiciary Committee unanimously and appointed by the Senate. And then he entered into a 26-year career as a federal judge, including as chief judge, and he took senior status in 2004. Throughout his years in practice, he mentored me and scores of other young lawyers in the practice. I had the occasion to appear before him once in court, and he mentored me there too. It was no less pleasant than some of the other mentoring experiences I had in the practice as well, and I know he's done the same. In addition to his mentoring of young lawyers, he has mentored for over 15 years to at-risk youth from the South Linden community, and I have met people in all walks of life who have suffered under his mentorship. From his mentoring, including young men from the South Linden community and very successful lawyers, some of whom are here. He continues to sit as a judge with senior status on the trial court and to serve on the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals and the 9th Circuit, which is in California. In law school, they refer to that as the Court of Disneyland. But in any event, it is my pleasure to have him as a friend and to speak for him today and to present this honor to him.
And now Jeff Apple will present to Harvey Minton.
I hope my walk doesn't count as part of my allotted time. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here today and be able to talk a little bit about my friend and colleague, Harvey Minton, who I've had the pleasure to get to know over the past 9 or so years as we've practiced side by side up here in Worthington. Throughout his career, Harvey has really demonstrated what are the finest qualities of a lawyer as well as a community servant. He was born and raised here in Columbus, Ohio. He attended University High School when it was in existence right down the street. And a little known story about Harvey, back in 1952, he was offered a football scholarship from Woody Hayes to come and play offensive tackle and punt for Ohio State. He declined, strangely enough, and instead accepted an academic scholarship. And I guess in hindsight that turned out pretty well for both the football program and Harvey, because he's here 50 years later to be able to accept this award with an intact mind and body, and still practicing to this day. And football program was okay too, because they went on to win the national championship in '54 without one undefeated. So. Prior to attending law school, Harvey was a jet pilot in the Air Force. He was stationed in Japan for 3 years, where he flew numerous missions on 3 different types of aircraft. After the Air Force, Harvey returned to Columbus to attend law school at his undergraduate school, Ohio State. He would graduate, of course, in '62 and started his career with Shoemaker, Loop, and Kendrick in Toledo. And while in Toledo for approximately 25 years, he also worked with Owens, Illinois, his in-house counsel at that company for years. While in Toledo, Harvey and his wife Jane kind of started their second career of community service, and were both very involved in the arts community in Toledo. Harvey was president of the board of trustees of both the Children's Theater Workshop as well as the Toledo Symphony while they were in Toledo, so very active in the community, and they both brought that with them back to Columbus. Here in the recent days, Harvey started his practice in Worthington in 1989, and he's been the mayor of Worthington since 1999. You know, over his 50-year plus career as an attorney, he's had a very distinguished and diverse career, but I think even more importantly, he's really separated himself as, you know, devoted friend, family man, and a tireless community servant. And I know I've been the recipient over the past 9 years of his mentorship, as many of the young attorneys and fellow members of the bar have been. So I'm very pleased to help present Harvey with this award today. And he's sitting in the back, so it's probably going to take him some time to get up here too. Thank you very much. Good job. Thank you.
And Quentin Winsmith will now present to James Monahan.
When I started practicing in the mid-1980s, I viewed myself as a fully grown adult with a fully developed frontal lobe, which meant I had good impulse control and I had good judgment. But in reality, as a lawyer, I was a child lawyer. And there were many child lawyers among us. And it is good that when we were child lawyers, there were many adult lawyers with us. And I must tell you, I'm so happy to see some great adult lawyers here today, assembled here, that I remember for a long time. And I'm so happy to be introducing to you James S. Monahan. I'm going to go through his chronology quickly because I don't have too much time. I will speak a little bit about the man. In terms of his chronology, he was born and raised in Akron. He went to the University of Akron, where he graduated in 1956. He then went into the Air Force from 1956 to 1959. The height of the Cold War. And for Jim, it was especially cold because they placed him in Barrow, Alaska. As far as you can go north in the United States, there's no civilized community north of Barrow, Alaska, and he was on the front lines with the Soviet Union right across the Bering Straits. And it was Jim's job to monitor the Soviet air pilot and traffic going on. And there was an incident I won't go into, but where he actually scrambled some American jets to go up and meet the enemy, and it was a mistake. And he almost brought destruction down upon us all. But he left the Air Force with honor. He went to law school at Case Western Reserve, and he started with the great law firm of Porter, Morris, and Arthur in 1962, and he was there for 20 years and built a remarkable practice as a medical malpractice defense lawyer and became a preeminent trial lawyer, such that after only 20 years of practicing law, and I mean this, after only 20 years of practicing law, he was invited into and became a fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, which is a remarkable feat. 1982 was also a happy year for Bricker and Eckler because he came to join us. And for the next 16 years, Jim was an absolute treasure. You know, we have great lawyers at our firm. We're proud of every one, but there's only a handful of lawyers that I would call legacy partners who leave legacies, and Jim is one of those people. Jim became the first counsel to the firm. Our firm grew so much we needed a lawyer for the lawyers. And Jim became the lawyer to the lawyers, which speaks volumes of what his peers thought of him. Jim also taught for a number of years from 1970 to 1988 as an adjunct professor at the OSU College of Medicine and the OSU College of Dentistry. And Jim's knowledge of medicine and the practice of medicine was so great that not only was he a great counsel to us at the firm, but he was also a counselor to those who had medical crises, to those who had great injuries and hurt in themselves or their families. And you couldn't get a better partner to be at your side when you were in trouble or your family was in trouble. I will tell you one more thing. In the 1980s, in my formative years, there was the ascendancy of what I would call, I can't say it in polite company, and with a beautiful child here, Judge Grace. But the blank litigator. In the 1980s, to be a blank litigator meant you were a jerk to everyone, and you misbehaved, and you became such a pain to the other side. That became your strategy to try and gain leverage to settle a case as opposed to the merits of your case. I think it came from New York. But it didn't last long because there were people like Jim Monahan who by his behavior and by his conduct said, that is not how we practice law. And to young formative lawyers who would walk into his office, I'm not naming names, but young lawyers who were pulled to that dark side and said, I want to be that jerk. I want to do this to that person. Those thoughts when you walked in Jim's office wilted. He was the kind of person when you walk in his office, you knew how to behave by the way he behaved. And I'll close up with one final anecdote that my Bricker colleagues know, but I will share with you. True story. It's an anecdote that speaks volumes of this man. I was walking through the city center mall with Pat Washburn, the late Pat Washburn, who was a paralegal in our shop. And Pat and I are walking along. We see Jim way down in the distance, farther than the end of this room. And he's walking ahead of us, his back to us. And Pat says to me, there goes the nicest man you will ever meet. And at that moment, Jim stops. Pat and I stopped. We thought, he couldn't have heard that. Jim looks down, and he bends down and he picks up a piece of litter, a small piece of litter, and puts it in the trash, thus proving the point. To be called nice, some people think is thin. To me, that's a loaded word. It is loaded, that means professional, courteous, polite, ethical, the kind of person you want to be. And so I present to you one of the nicest gentlemen you will ever meet, Jim Monahan. Did I embarrass you?
Oh, a little.
Don Owens to present to Robert Perry.
Although not a lawyer, I find myself here introducing my old friend Bob Perry, my lifelong friend, I should say. It's a pleasure to do this while we're both still vertical, and the circumstances are a happy occasion. I'm going to archive my thoughts, however, Bob, toward the eventuality that I may need them again sometime. Bob was born in 1932 in or near Glenford, Ohio, in Perry County, with 6 brothers and 1 sister in the house. I can't imagine what it was like for Mary, but she did survive and is still living today. Bob was educated at North High School in Columbus, in Ohio State. After undergraduate school, Bob spent a couple of years in the Foreign Service before returning to Columbus for law school. Somewhere between high school and college, he was an Air Force medic, which gave rise to thoughts of medical school. But his naturally argumentative nature kicked in, and he opted for political science and eventually law. Bob's law career started with the Ohio Industrial Commission and ended with Perry Diederich and Associates in Columbus, and a lot of stops along the way, but I don't want to take too much time there. I've been told not to take too much time there. At any rate, he retired from practice in about 1995, and in 1981 he served as a term as president of the Bar Association. Throughout these years, Bob has been a great friend, not only to me, but especially to a tight circle of poker players known as the Clintonville Uplift Society. Sadly, the club has lost a few members, but we hope that the invention of large print playing cards will spur him. Bob, it's your deal.
And now Susan Petro to present to her husband, John Petro.
He's my dad.
Marion set me up for that.
There's a girl being born in America, and someone will give her a doll and someone will give her a ball, and someone will give her a chance. Those words come from the Nike Corporation circa 1996, but for me, they've only ever been about one person, the Columbus Bar Association's next 50-year honoree, John Joseph Petro, my dad. In his professional life, he was a founding fellow of the American College of Construction Lawyers, served as chairman of the Fidelity, Surety, and Public Contract Law Committee of the Federation of Defense and Corporate Counsel, has published, lectured, presented, mediated, and arbitrated extensively on fidelity, surety, and construction contract issues, and received the following recognitions of his accomplishments: the Roswell Bottom Award for contributions to the fidelity and surety industry, the Martin J. Andrew Award for Lifetime Achievement in Fidelity and Surety Law from the American Bar Association Fidelity and Surety Law Committee, inclusion in the Best Lawyers in America and Ohio Super Lawyers, and was named Best Lawyers 2010 Columbus, Ohio Construction Lawyer of the Year. But in talking about his storied career, in a room full of storied careers, what is easily lost is the heart and soul of a man who chose justice as a way of life. For that, we must look beyond the desk, the bench, and the podium, outside the office, the courtroom, and the classroom, to the fullness of a life lived justly. In John Petro's case, that search leads to the softball diamond and an abiding belief in equal opportunity. For nearly 40 years, he left work early every spring, first to coach in and then to run a softball program in which literally thousands of girls were given a team, a uniform, a ball, and a chance. I don't know that I ever heard my dad speak for women, but he didn't have to. He showed us how to speak for ourselves. In word and deed, he taught us all that someone looking for a fair shot in work and in life would ever really need to know: pride, teamwork, sportsmanship, how to take a pitch, how to swing away, how to read the signals, when to take a risk, when to call the ball, how to get dirty without getting hurt, how to shake off a bad call, your own or someone else's, and how to have fun. Congratulations, Dad, on 50 years of wise, accomplished legal practice and a lifetime of advocating, teaching, and exemplifying fairness, equality, and justice.
And now Bill Zimes to present to his father, Benjamin.
Thanks. This is a big deal. I've revised my remarks many times, and I last night finally decided to take out any mention of Afghanistan and the troops, so I hope that doesn't hurt me. I think you'd much prefer that joke to my gratuitous incontinence joke, which was kind of tempting for this occasion. But trust me, that was better. I want to start with a few words about my dad as a practicing attorney. It's hard to find time to practice law when you're managing a law firm. But in the 7 years that I did practice law at Schottenstein, Sachsen-Dett, I did have the occasion to practice with my dad on several occasions. And as a lawyer, it was maybe different than you expect. Most people probably think of him as a consummate gentleman. Now, if you've ever played golf with him, you might think otherwise. Trust me that I've heard him utter things on the golf course within earshot of elderly couples that would make George Carlin blush. As a lawyer, he actually used some of that same intensity, and even though he was a real estate and a business lawyer, he was actually a very fierce advocate for his clients. But at the same time, he had a great sense of humor, and by the end of the deal, he inevitably was great friends with all parties and all lawyers involved in the deal, and he, most importantly, never let his ego get in the way, and he knew how to close a deal. Sometimes people often ask, I practiced law for 7 years and then 12 years ago I changed careers, and people often ask me how my dad reacted to that. And I tell him if I had walked into his office 12 years ago and said, Dad, I'm thinking about getting involved in organized crime, he would have said, what can I do to help? I'm sure he had mixed emotions about my decision to change careers, but I would never know that because he never led on to that at all. And I'm sure that there are many others in his law firm, in the profession, and in the community, not to mention his family, who have benefited from that same unquestioned support over the years, which has meant so much. And then finally, I want to say a few words about his commitment to the profession. This bar association has meant a great deal to my father. His induction as president 26 years ago was one of the great days for our family. The singular achievement of his presidency was the minority clerkship program. Since its inception, more than 500 summer clerks have been employed under this program. When my father walked through a door of opportunity, he turned around and pulled as many people through that door as he could. Ultimately, those people succeed on their own merits, but it sure helps to have someone like my father pave the way for you. He has a humility about his achievements, and whether you are his child or a lawyer that he has brought into his law firm, he believes and he makes you believe that you should and that you will achieve way more than him. On behalf of my mom, Julie, my sister, Holly, who is in Seattle, my sister, Missy, and my wife, Jeannie, who's in the middle of the preparation of the most important meal of the year right now, it's an honor to present my father, Ben Zox, as a 50-year attorney.
Unfortunately, Professor Albert Clovis, whom many of us in this room had the pleasure of learning contracts from, could not be here today, and also Sheldon Taft could not be here. So the next time you see them, wish them congratulations as well. So congratulations to all the recipients. Thank you for your years of service, and thank you for showing us the path to professionalism and civility. All the recipients, please come to the front for a group photo, and we are adjourned. Thank you.